Family is our starting point, all of us. It's for all of us. We all sojourn and wander first there, where our families took us, where they deposited us, where they dropped us off on the planet. That's where we sojourn and wander. And then whether or not we move past that, that's completely up to us. So that family that you were a part of, the one that you thought, well, I thought everybody yelled to get their way. I thought everybody ignored each other. I thought everybody just didn't admit that they were wrong. I thought everybody refused to apologize or didn't resolve problems. I thought every parent was this way. I thought every parent was that way. All that for it, family of origin stuff. I talked with a lady last week, and she shared with me that her and her sister, it wasn't until they were in their 30s that they figured out that the fact that there were two contacts, emergency contacts for their mom and dad, like wherever, hey, if something happens, call one of these two numbers. And one of those numbers was Shelley's bar. They thought that was normal. They thought everybody's family's like that. There's nothing normal about that. But that's how family of origin stuff works. We just think, well, that's the way it was. It's what I grew up with. I thought everyone was like that. Families aren't perfect. But you know what? There's a lot of good ones too. And so it's a mixed bag for sure. And we need to understand, how do they help us? How have they maybe hurt us? How have they hindered us? What do we need to unlearn? And so this isn't a way to bash our families, because I thank God for the family that I came from. But I also think there are some teachings from Scripture that help me do some things, I think, better in a more Jesus, God-honoring way than what I initially learned. Family, and this is in your notes, is very messy. And of course, sometimes it's just messed up. Thank God for Faith Family, the church here. And blended families can be an even more challenging puzzle. And I'm not making light of that whatsoever. I'm just acknowledging the truth. They could be a challenging puzzle for us. And so I'm just stating that because we need to acknowledge it so that we can all deal with the fact that, oh, okay, thank you for admitting that it really is a very challenging puzzle. Mom and dad are excited to be together. Parents are excited to be together in this marriage, but that doesn't mean everybody else is. And so how do you work through all that? What are we doing? How do we bring God into this? And so then we talked about family is our starting waypoint. It's that waypoint, your navigation system. It's that one address that you have plugged into your navigation system no matter where you are on the planet. If you say go to waypoint, it's going to find the closest way, the shortest drive to that address. Your family is that. That's your default. Jesus literally came to be our waypoint. He's the one to show us, how do we get to the Father? How do we get to that piece of ground? Jesus. That's why we study his teachings, his life, what he did, what he didn't do. And we see in the Old Testament the teachings of God's heart. We see in the New Testament all through how God's heart is lived out. That's why we study these things. That's why we know these stories. That's why Joseph's story is here for us, so that we can reset the navigation, so that our default is not this imperfect example that we were given, but it becomes Christ and Christ alone. Is this making sense to anybody else in the place? All right, so what I want to talk about today is we're going to talk about this family of origin piece, because this is where the story is right now. So we might as well start there ourselves. So when we're talking about reprogramming, the waypoint, let's start with family. And in this particular issue, the issue of family that they're dealing with is favoritism. Out of all the problems that they're talking about, and I'm sure there were many in Jacob's family, but this issue of favoritism was so big that it made the ink of Scripture. And so favoritism is something all of us deal with. Whether it's your family, whether it's your place of work, whether it is a sports team, whether it's another group of people you hang out with, I don't know, but there are lots of different ways that we see favoritism working in and around our lives, that it's affected us, it's shaped us, and some of it we're involved in right now. And there's two perspectives. There's the people who are favoriting, choosing the favorites, and then there are people who are on the short end of that stick because they're not the favorite. We've got both in this story. Joseph is the favored, and you'd think, wow, he's got it all made. No, he doesn't, because the favoritism of Jacob makes him the object of ridicule for the rest of his family. Hey, things may be great between him and Dad, but all the brothers, the people that he's spending so much time with, they literally want to kill him. So this whole thing is messed up. So let's talk about how we reprogram. And I want to talk about this issue of favoritism because you may be here and you're saying, well, I don't have any kids in my home. Great. But you probably have kids. Whether they're in your home or they're out of your home, if they're 50, 60 years old. If this has been an issue, here's what I know. Without Jesus intervening in their life, it's still an issue for them. Because their waypoint is that family of origin unless somehow, some way, God has intervened and done a divine intervention to change their default. Yes? Yep. And then there's the other side of it where you and I may have been the ones who got the short end of the stick in the family. It's interesting, this week there were a couple of different people that I talked with, and as they would ask the question, who was the favorite in your family? They all had an answer. And they weren't the answer. Everybody has this perspective. So it's interesting whether it's real or whether it's not. If you believe it, it's real. So let's deal with it. Yes? All right, so wherever you're at in this, I think you can find some application. How do I, it's in your notes, reprogram Jesus as the waypoint to get to resiliency? Because that's really the point. The point of this message is not favoritism, it's not jealousy. The point of this message is resiliency. It's how do we get to resilient? Because God is offering you and me much more than a sad story. He wants to finish that story and show resilience. Number one, as we look at this whole idea of favoritism, parental, workplace, friendship, sports teams, wherever you happen to find it, number one, check your heart. It starts with me. Check my heart. What do I feel towards each child, each grandchild? Hey, we're all feeling things towards them. And let's just be honest, some are much easier to love. And some make it really, really hard to love them. And so you got everything in between in your family, and so this is really going on, so we might as well admit it, might as well deal with it. The scripture says Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. We need to admit it. We just need to admit it and start making a shift and recognizing that we need to still do our very best in order to treat each one past our feelings, through our feelings, and do for each one as we have done for the others. That we can check our own hearts and recognize that if I feel one way towards another one, it's going to come through unless it's going to show favoritism, unless I'm going to do something and I'm asking God for the help. And listen, you can't change your feelings, but you can change what you do. See, well, my kids are 53. Okay, make a call. Hello? First, I want you to hear me. I'm sorry. Now, I'll tell you what I'm sorry for. I have showed favoritism in our family, and I believe that it might have hurt you. And I'd really like to get to a place of healing in regards to this. You see, those are the kind of calls that mature Christians will make. Those are the kind of calls of people who have roots that are going in the ground that keep us upright. Those are the kind of things that we do. And then God is able to do an incredible healing in these situations, but it starts by checking what's going on inside my heart. Number two, check your affections. It said one day Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph. I'm sure he thought it was going to be an incredible moment. It was a beautiful robe, it said. But his brothers hated Joseph because of their father, loved him more than the rest of them. I think if you look at the story, you could probably say that Jacob, his love language was gift giving. So he showed love through giving of special gifts, unique gifts. He knew that Joseph was going to love this gift. He's going to be this incredible connection between him and Joseph. That wasn't the problem. The problem is he didn't have 11 more robes made. That was his problem. He had the special moment with Joseph. That's what he was looking for, but he didn't look for the special moment with the other boys. And so when it comes to this whole thing about checking my heart and what's going on in here, and I need to check my affections as well and how I'm expressing those. Because what I'm feeling on the inside is coming out in a lot of different ways I don't even recognize, but other people do. And it's why their brothers hated Joseph. They didn't hate Joseph because Joseph, they hated Joseph because of how the father was treating Joseph. The whole perspective is just skewed. I think about my grandmother. When my brother and I were just boys, one thing that she would do that I thought was so amazing and very special for us is that she would take our birthdays and she would take us, and we got to spend the whole day with her. And breakfast, lunch, we got to go wherever we wanted. She would buy us whatever food or parentheses crap we wanted to eat. Didn't matter. We got to eat as much of it as we wanted. And she'd take us to whatever store we wanted to go to. And if I went back to the same store 4 times to get a gift, to look at the gift, to go look at the gift again, and then see it again, and then leave and go see if there was something else better, and then go back and finally pick up that gift at that store, she did not care. She was willing to do it. She'd drive us wherever we wanted to go on that day. We just had this amazing day. I remember one gift that she gave me. She did this years in a row. I remember one gift because the gift wasn't really the issue. It was time with my grandmother. She showed her affection by just being available and serving and being present with us. She made that a very unique and beautiful, special day. In your notes, I've listed out, there's a great book called The 5 Love Languages. If you know about this, then you already know, wow, that's a great tool. If you don't know about this, wow, it's a great tool. The 5 love languages are there. They're pretty self-explanatory, but there's a lot more that if you read the book. But I just want to show you that out of these 5, that there are 1, 2, maybe 3, but 1 or 2 that are really, really what people, you, and the people in your life, your kids, your spouse, your mom, dad, however this whole favoritism thing all works, whether it's people in the workplace, however it works out, there are people, each one of them have a love language. And what you just think about this. Words of affection or affirmation. There's certain people, they really love that. Physical touch. This is something, like hugs, handshakes, just, hey, bro, somebody's fist bumping you constantly. That's probably one of theirs. Receiving gifts. This was probably Jacob. This is why he gave Joseph the robe. Most likely he was a gift giver. Quality time, something that a lot of people have. Acts of service. And so here's where it comes into play. When you think about showing our affections, people will say, oh, man, I just so passionately love this person. I love my wife. And how do you show her? Well, I mow the lawn without her ever asking me. I fixed that cabinet because I noticed it wasn't working the way it should be. I took the WD-40 and I took care of that squeak on the front door before she even asked. How do you show her that you love her? Acts of service. That's awesome. Except she doesn't care about that. I mean, some of you do. But some of you say words of affirmation. I want to hear you say it. Those acts of service, that's just what you do. I want to hear the words come out of your mouth. And when I hear that, I know that you love me. But when you mow the lawn, I don't. Well, she should just know. Well, she doesn't, and neither do you, unless she speaks to you in her love language. What are your kids' love languages? Well, I don't know. They're out of my house. We'll figure it out. I'll bet you could peg it. I'll bet you could look on this list right now and probably find 1 or 2 of those for each one of your kids. And you could probably figure it out and start talking to them in a language that they actually understand. Is this making sense to us, church? So why would I do that? Because this is what mature people do so that they can learn resilience through their life. And here's the truth of it. If I want to continue to talk to them in a language that they don't want to hear it in, they're not hearing it. And you can beat your head up against a wall and a door or whatever else you want to beat it up against all day long and say, well, they should. They won't. So as a mature follower of Jesus, somebody who says, you know what, I want to take this issue of favoritism in my family, I'm taking this thing to the ground. I'm going to wrestle this thing to the ground. I'm going to pay attention to how people want to be loved. And I'm going to love them that way. What an amazing thing could happen as you and I check our hearts and we check our affections. Do you know their languages? Well, when you do, if you do, then you can speak to them in their language. Number 3, check your time. It says Joseph was home more than the others. He did the same thing with Benjamin. These were his 2 favorites. Benjamin came along after Joseph, and he did the same thing to Benjamin that he did with Joseph. He kept him at home. He worked in the field some. The brothers were out there all the time. They were home a whole lot more often. Now, here's the truth. We all know it. Because of sports schedules and interests and school schedules and all kinds of reasons, you're not going to be able to spend the same amount of time with all of your kids or the people in your life that you love or even people at work, however this issue of favoritism is working out. If you're in the position or the perch where you're the one who has the ability to create favorites or not. But what you can do is make sure that the quality of the time that you spend with people is meaningful. Now, my son and I both enjoy baseball, and so him and I'm the one running him back and forth a lot in regards to that whole schedule. My wife is doing that with my daughter Hannah and her piano schedule because she does that. That's her big thing. And so, but we make sure that we're intentionally spending time with the other ones as well. But here's something I thought was really wonderful. My daughter Hannah, don't tell her. She's going to be in the next service, so she'll be horrified that I told you this. Just because I'm talking about her from the pulpit at all. I noticed about probably 7 months ago, she says, hey, Dad, I want to ride home with you. Every third service, after each service, she goes, I want to ride home with you. She specifically waits for me so that she can do this. And her and I go crazy, silly nuts in the car as we're driving home. And you don't want to hear us because we sound horrible. But the 2 of us get it. And it is a quality time that we laugh about throughout the rest of the week. It's just fun. She chooses to do that for me. I love it. I love it. And she does this because she knows that it's time for her and I that really is meaningful. And it lasts a long time of satisfaction throughout the week that we spend that time together. So it's not the amount as much as the quality of what we actually do for each other. Does this make sense, guys? Okay, so check your time, and then the last one, check your words. Words matter. Here's what I know about Jacob. His words made it absolutely clear. Whatever he was saying, we don't have quotes from him, but whatever he was saying, all 11 brothers knew that Joseph was the favorite. And it wasn't because he bought him a robe. It was because his words confirmed it time and time and time and time again. What are your words saying? What are you choosing to say to one and another? It matters. It matters. It matters. And here's the implication that the other brothers took is that their lives were expendable because of how much he cherished Joseph and how much he cherished Benjamin. I think about one of our beloved leaders around here, Doug Britton. Doug Britton is a lead marriage ministry and our family life ministry here at the church. He was telling me that when he was a little boy, his dad had this phrase. It was a phrase that he used whenever he just didn't really want to hear it, whatever the conversation was, or when he thought what you were saying just didn't have merit. And he would say it often. He would say, "That's the silliest thing I've ever heard." Now, I'm sure as a parent, he was thinking, come on, do we have to talk about that or whatever? I doubt he really meant that. But Doug heard it as demeaning. It had the result of demoralizing. It had the result of shutting down conversations. Think about all the needed conversations from a boy to his father that were shut down because Doug did not want to hear the words. That's the silliest thing I've ever heard. We all have phrases. We have go-tos. And if you're sitting here and you're going, I don't have a go-to. Yes, you do. And the people in your life could tell you what it is. And if you're brave, you'll ask. People that you work with, you have a go-to. Your spouse, your kids, your mom and dad, you got a go-to. Just ask them. Just ask them. You have a go-to. Just make sure that go-to isn't demoralizing and it's not defeating for the people that you're saying it to. Just making sense, guys? Yeah.